Okay, so now I found out what went wrong. You remember that time when I said like I don't need nickel in between because I don't need the surface to be super hard because I will not touch and handle it? That was the issue. So the only thing left to do is now get rid of all our former work and redo everything. So I got my finished mask here now. So it isn't done by copper paint anymore. It is an ESD paint, which they use to basically shield stuff from electromagnetic waves. This one has a really high conductivity. Let me quickly show you. So I'm going to measure over the whole mask. We have about 0.9, 0.8 ohm over the whole surface. So that's actually really good for our copper plating we're doing next. This one was painted by a professional painter, but I still want to polish the surface a little bit because you have a little bit of roughness whenever paint is attached to a surface. So I will be sanding it down with a wet 3000 grit to get a really smooth surface, and then I'm going to use a special polishing compound to get a shiny surface. I grabbed my 3000 grit waterproof sanding paper and the old bowl of water. And now let's get to sanding. So what can happen while you're sanding your part is to catch the edges with your sandpaper. So a good thing to avoid that is using an old sponge to make a soft surface so you reduce the pressure on a specific point or edge on your part. The point of wet sanding a part is actually not to get rid of your old dust. It is so when you get the polished surface that your grit that is detaching from your sandpaper doesn't get stuck between your sandpaper and your part and roll around into big deep scratches. So the water prevents this by getting rid of everything that is attached to the paper. The sanding is only there to take off the highest points in your paint so it feels a little smoother. Now we're going to do a polish because as you can see now it is really like cloudy, dusty. You can't polish this to a mirror finish of course, but you can get close to it. So I actually bought some special polishing compound. Normally it's meant for gold and metals. It has a very low abrasive in it and it makes really high polish parts. So if you're using metal, if you're on metal polishing or metal plating, you can use that to get a like real mirror finish. As fine if you take your time with it, so you can scratch it with like pads or wool. Crazy. So let's shake it up.
Shake it up!
So I'm using makeup pads for that because they are really soft and non-scratchy. And what you do, you just apply a little bit of polishing compound directly to the pad, just like that. You have a little dot on there. And then you start applying it. First you do it low to spread it through the surface, and after that you go really fast. Because polishing fast will get better results. I'm applying it a little over here, and I will do one section at a time so I don't lose track where I polished and where I didn't polish. I put a second one on there so I have really a little bit of polishing compound, and I go in a circular motion. So don't go too crazy with polishing because there is a high possibility of you grinding through the paint. The test I showed you with the water droplets basically pearling off your surface is a good one to see if you're polished enough. There isn't a possibility to get any shinier with just these paints. Like on cars, if you have mirror surfaces, that's normally clear paint, so you won't get the mirror surface out of that. But if you run your fingers over it and it feels really smooth, then you're basically ready for the next step. The next step is again copper plating this part. I bought some more of the mirror copper just because I know I messed up last time and I'm probably going to need a lot. The professionals also gave me the tip that I should really thick copper plate. So I have to have a thick layer of copper on my part so I'm able to polish that before I add the nickel. So what we're actually looking for is, if you look in this area, you see that it starts to get flat and really reflective. And up here, you see the color change to a darker reddish tone. So we want to have a reddish tone like that, with a surface like that down here, spread over the whole part. Don't cheap out in the time effort to copper plate your part. It will be the most crucial thing to achieve a good surface finish and a good mirror reflectiveness of your gold later on. As you see, we now have a metallic looking part. That's the look we're going for. You see some areas where it has a lot of mirror finish, and so it closed down all the pores, and you have a few edges and rough things there where you can see discoloration and stuff. Don't worry about that, that's totally normal and fine. So what I'm now going to do, after now I added a thick layer of copper, I will grind it down again to smoothen it out, to get rid of all the bumps. Because as we learned earlier, your plating is always going to follow all your surface imperfection. It attaches everywhere in the perfect same amount of thickness. So now that we build up enough, we can grind down all the high parts to match the low parts and get a nice, even, smooth finish. We will start out with a 2000 grit sandpaper, but this time we're starting out dry, not wet, because we want to actually remove material. So yeah, let's go with it.
2,000 years later.
I bought a buffing wheel to really get a high gloss finish on these parts. I tested on a scrap piece earlier. So you have your buffing wheel, you have a polishing compound. I use a high gloss polish for aluminum. And so basically what you do, you apply it as a hard polishing compound to your buffing wheel, and then you buff it with high speed. But not too much force, you don't want to grind through again. Now that we're done with copper plating and polishing, we can move on to nickel plating. For nickel plating, you need your graphite electrode in your plating apparatus. And I want to give you a little tip. Inside here, there's this little spring, and this one tends to rust a lot. What I basically do, I sand down both contacting surfaces as well as the inside of the pan. So let's test out if that helps to get a connection. You see, I'm getting some connectivity issues, but I think that is because of this crocodile clamp. Let me quickly get some sandpaper or anything like that and clean it off. Now I just have to find it in my mess. Got it. Whew. And sound of success. As you could see here, copper tends to oxidize a lot. So the same thing will be happened with your part. So first order of business, we have to strip all the oxidizers to give the nickel something to adhere. Otherwise, yeah, you will get parts where it loosens. I polish this mask to a partially mirrored surface, but as mentioned before, I want to have some Battledamage. So I scuffed up the bottom and the sides a little bit and basically broke the copper layer. I have a little like bump in the surface that looks very natural because it's actually damage. And then I copper plated again because I was down to the copper paint. So I copper plated thinly above that. I can get my nickel plating on there. But what it will do, it will always show the three-dimensional hole in your part, but it will be covered with gold. So at the end, you can rough up the deeper spots again, and the gold will disappear there easily because it doesn't have that much material to stick on. And so you get realistic damage, battle damage to your mask, and that's exactly what we want to have. So let me real quick clean that off. We use our Electrocleaner for that because this cleaner strips oxidizers very well. Don't forget to put on gloves. I learned that the hard way. We first give it a wash without electricity, and after that we give it a wash with electricity. So pre-wash, your part will have a lot of dirt and black marks on it. And after the wash, it should look copper all the way. Look at that dirt, and we even stripped off some of our plating here where I did the damage. That's not too bad. So let's finish the pre-cleaning, and then we do the cleaning with electricity. So on here it says 5 volts. Let's go to 5 volts. And because I want to soak, I will not use the pad. I will use some of these cotton pads as a cleaning device around my electrode. So look that you really soak it, get it really wet. Attach it, get the minus pole on your part. Look if you have connectivity, yes. Wow. And give it a wash with electricity. And you see the copper getting lighter, like more glossy, losing a little bit of this orange color and going more to rose gold or something like that, because like the typical dark orange color of copper is nothing else than an oxide forming on the surface. So we want to strip that oxide, and you see like the details I did with roughing up the part will partially disappear or become invisible to the naked eye because the oxidation layer is gone. Go in everywhere you want to plate. And remember to move your minus pole somewhere else so you can clean the part where your minus pole was as well. So give it a good wash. Quickly clean it off with distilled water. Please only use distilled water for that, otherwise you will form a new oxide layer immediately. And after we've done that, we have to start with plating as fast as possible so we don't get a new oxide layer. Let me do that real quick. I love the mirror shine of that. Yeah, but if you look at Ironman, it doesn't have a mirror finish. It's matte gold normally, but I choose to ignore that and do some parts mirror finish because I want to show off, basically. Okay, we attach our electrode somewhere it can stay for the plating process. We take our nickel electrolyte, I filled it in here, and to avoid overspill, I am going to use a bucket for this one. Be careful with nickel. Nickel is a metal that will do damage in your body if you get too much of it.
You give me another one and make it a double.
Like copper. Learned that the hard way. We grab our pad in our nickel solution. I love the color of those, by the way. Like this light blue. We go down to around 4 volts for starters. And we start plating. So don't be alarmed. The plating will actually be hard. Nickel is very hard to get on a part, and it will be black at the beginning. So you have to move really quickly and get a lot of effort and time into this part. The nickel is basically an in-between layer between the copper and the gold, because gold actually tends to mix with copper. That's what I did wrong the first time. So you want to have that nickel to separate the gold and the copper, because the copper is just the conductivity part of your part, your plating. The other purpose of the nickel is to give a hardened layer. So copper is really soft. Nickel is relatively hard.
Nick. My name is Nick.
So if you have a nickel layer and you put your gold layer on top, the gold will adhere to it a long time and will stay shiny and glossy even if you use it. If you don't have a nickel layer, if you, for example, use graphite and then gold plate it directly, yeah, the gold will basically scratch easier, wear off easier than if you have a hardened nickel in between. So let's start nickel plating and see how it goes. It slowly turns silverish. That means the nickel is going on there. Now we have to work through the whole part. Look at that. The mirrorness gets better and better because the silver is reflecting way better than the copper color. So I have parts where it's really like a mirror. I'm starting to regret my Battledamage at this point, but now I basically committed. So let's finish that. You might ask yourself, why Battledamage? I add Battledamage because everything too clean doesn't look realistic. I want it to look like a real Ironman helmet. An Ironman would never give you a new helmet, so...
Here, take my helmet!
Okay, I did a second coat. Like, I first polished it with polishing compound, then I did the second coat, and I mean, look at that. It is glossy, it is shiny, it is mirror up here, but has Battledamage all over. I love the look of it. At some point, I think I will do just a mask in silver. Basically, the Ironman Mark II, when he first developed it. So when he flew around and tested it and tinkered with it, I love this scene. So maybe I will do a silver mask in the future. And I'm thinking about if I do a flawless one just for like hanging purposes or something like that. But with this one, I'm super happy with everything with the damage. The most important thing before electroplating is you have to activate. This activator will make the nickel accept the gold. Stainless steel and stuff like that should be activated before gold plating directly. It adheres better. Now we will go activate it. We do that with 3 volts. We do a quick pass. We rinse it off and we immediately start gold plating. You should try to get your activation and your gold plating within the span of a minute. Basically activate, rinse off, and within a minute start to gold plate. I would suggest to give it a like really big gold wash right after you start it. So everywhere it's covered by the solution and it will not oxidize or deactivate anymore. So I will get you a little bit closer because I think this part will be really interesting to see in detail. Let's get started. Activation is again done with a graphite electrode. So leave your graphite electrode in, connect your minus, and because I am out of plating pads, I will again use a cotton pad for the activation. Whew, it smells really bad. You can see that it basically fucks up a little bit where you washed. That's a good sign. Rinse it off thoroughly. The activator has to vanish before you gold plate, but make it quick. It fumes a lot. Don't breathe it in. Now hurry. Bad thing is to also change your gloves so you don't get activator on your part, electrode, or in the gold electrolyte. So we switch to our platinum electrode. Let's get to it. Gold solution, 12 grams per liter. Look at that gorgeous color. Okay, we get out our tampon, attach our minus, go to 4 volts, and start plating. Would you look at that? That is gorgeous. After we gave it our 4 volt pre-wash, we go to 7 volts and go ahead and gold plate. Because I found out that in this state, 7 volt just works the best. With 9 you get dark spots, with less it takes forever. And now you see like the shininess of the gold coming in and even hiding some of these damaged parts, so I have to rough them up later again. A good idea is also to get your minus pole to somewhere where you gold plate it. You will scratch the gold, but the conductivity of the gold is just way better than the nickel.